Probiotics, are they the cure to all that ails you, or are they simply snake oil? We are going to talk about it today. Hi, I'm Kara McIver, a registered dietitian that helps young and middle-aged adults reduce their risk of developing chronic diseases, things like type 2 diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and more. If you don't have the time or the money to see a registered dietitian, then this is the channel for you. Probiotics have been touted in relation to all different kinds of conditions, everything from autism and bloating and obesity to irritable bowel syndrome, depression, diabetes, cancer prevention, and more. Today, I'm going to explain what makes an effective probiotic if you need to take one, and what are some foods that are going to naturally provide probiotics. When people talk about gut health or the microbiome, what they're really talking about is the number and the diversity of the microorganisms that live in your large intestine. I refer to those microorganisms as your gut bugs. If you want more of a general explainer on the microbiome, I will link to a previous video right up here. Everyone's microbiome looks different in terms of the exact number of microorganisms and the different types of microorganisms that live in your gut. Now, we know that a higher number and more variety in your gut population tends to be healthier than a lower number or less diversity in your gut community. And this is sort of where the idea of probiotics come in, because probiotics are actually meant to deliver more of those live microorganisms directly into your gut. So if you don't have enough, or you need more of a certain population, theoretically, a probiotic supplement could solve that problem for you. That sounds really great. However, what research tells us is that probiotic supplements are not actually as effective as maybe you've been led to believe. Now, for probiotics to be effective, they really need to meet 5 criteria. First, the bugs need to provide a proven benefit to your body. As I mentioned, there are different kinds of bugs. These are referred to as strains, and strains are sort of like breeds of dogs or cats. Now, at a high level, wolves and chihuahuas are both dogs, but there is certainly going to be a difference in your experience if one or the other is living in your house. Now, your microbiome might be out of balance because you're low on the number of bugs that you have, or you're missing out on a certain strain of beneficial bugs. But every probiotic is going to deliver different species of bugs. So not every probiotic is going to be effective for what you are trying to address. The second condition that a probiotic needs to meet in order to be effective is your probiotic needs to contain enough microorganisms that is actually going to make a difference in the population that is already living in your gut. So even someone who has a lower amount of microbiotic abundance, meaning they have fewer bugs, is still going to have trillions of organisms that make up their microbiome. So if your probiotic supplement is only delivering a few million or even a few billion organisms, that is sort of like putting a drop in an already full bucket. It just is not going to move the needle very much. The third thing that makes a probiotic effective is that when you take it, the microorganisms are still alive and viable. Your gut bugs are living organisms. Just like humans, they don't work if they're dead. Also, just like humans, there are some conditions where those microorganisms can thrive, and there are other conditions in which they can't survive at all. In order to become a supplement, a bug has to survive fermentation, freezing and thawing, drying, rehydration, and encapsulation, which means differences in temperature, humidity, oxygen availability, pH, and acidity of the environment. Most microorganisms just can't handle that much change. On the other hand, if you're trying to get probiotics from food, the live organisms have to be able to withstand whatever food storage and preparation technique it's going through. The fourth piece, when it comes to ensuring a probiotic is effective, is that those live microorganisms have to actually be able to make it through your digestive tract to your large intestine. So let's say that the bugs did survive the commercial packaging process. They now have to withstand the acidity of your stomach acid, and they have to be able to make it all the way through your small intestine without being digested and absorbed into circulation. Now, for reference, almost all of what we eat and 90% of the water that we consume is absorbed before it gets to the large intestine. And the fifth thing that makes an effective probiotic is that it's in a form that is safe to consume or apply to your body. Now, remember, these are called probiotics specifically because they do something beneficial to your body. There are lots of microorganisms that would not do something beneficial to your body. They're called pathogens. Now, most probiotic foods and supplements are going to meet this criteria. However, the raw milk trend is picking up steam. And part of the reason is because raw milk has more live microorganisms than pasteurized milk. The whole point of pasteurization is that we lightly heat the milk before we consume it, and that gentle heating kills off the microorganisms that naturally occur in milk. Now, we do that pasteurization of milk because the microorganisms that we're getting in raw milk tend to come from the cow's environment, which tend to be feces and viruses or bacteria from other farm animals. And when we as humans consume those microorganisms, they tend to be quite detrimental to our health. They can make us very sick. They can also be deadly. So it is absolutely true. There are more live microorganisms in raw milk than in pasteurized milk. However, it is not true that there are more probiotics in raw milk. And that is because probiotics are specifically beneficial. And many of the microorganisms that we get from raw milk are not. So as a registered dietitian, I have to strongly discourage you from trying to get the strains of microorganisms into your gut using raw milk as the vehicle. There's also some research that suggests genetic mutations can happen in probiotic strains, and those changes can potentially be detrimental to human health. We don't have a ton of research there, but it is a possibility. So now that you know what makes an effective probiotic in the general sense, let's talk about specifically what conditions a probiotic might be useful for and if it makes sense for you to consume a probiotic supplement. Like all nutrition problems, the answer is maybe. When I'm doing research like this, where I'm asking a pretty big question and there is potentially a wealth of scientific evidence, I like to look at examine.com. Now, again, not sponsored, but it is a really good resource, especially if you are trying to understand the effectiveness of a certain supplement. And I like examine.com because their scientists are highly qualified to read, compile, and synthesize all of the existing research on a topic into letter grades, like A through F, for certain health conditions. And they're even better and have much more experience than I do, even having finished a master's degree in human nutrition. There are 18 health outcomes where probiotics received either an A or a B for effectiveness. As a registered dietitian, those are the only circumstances that I would recommend a probiotic supplement. And for the most part, the benefits were seen in pretty specific populations. Now, there were a whole bunch of other health conditions where probiotics received a C or a D letter grade. And for those conditions and for the general population, it just doesn't look like probiotic supplementation is really worth it, despite all the things that they are being advertised to do. So the place where we see the strongest support or the strongest evidence for taking a probiotic supplement is in people who have irritable bowel syndrome. Probiotics decreased IBS global symptoms, which include abdominal pain, changes in bowel habits, including constipation, diarrhea, or sometimes both, gas, cramps, bloating. And that's huge for people with IBS because we don't have a lot of other treatments for this condition. There's also evidence suggesting that probiotic supplementation increased appetite and reduced the odds of mouth ulcers in patients undergoing chemotherapy for cancer. Again, a really great treatment option because people who are undergoing cancer and lose weight tend to die much more often than people who don't lose weight. So if we can reduce the barriers to eating while a person is undergoing chemotherapy with a probiotic supplement, that is a worthwhile therapy. There were also a couple of studies that saw a reduction in the CRP marker, which is a marker of inflammation, specifically in people with schizophrenia and people with psoriasis, which is a skin condition. But reducing the CRP levels did not actually make much of a difference in the actual incidences of schizophrenia and psoriasis in these patients. So they brought down the inflammation marker, but didn't really change their day-to-day life. Children aged 4 to 12 with various food allergies who were taking probiotic supplements seemed to see a reduction in eczema symptoms, and people with cystic fibrosis saw a decrease in a marker of stomach inflammation when they were taking probiotic supplements. In developing countries, so not the United States, probiotic supplementation reduced the risk of developing gestational diabetes. Gestational diabetes can be very detrimental for baby and mom. There's also one study that showed probiotic supplementation reduced average HbA1c, which is the marker of average blood glucose levels over the last 2 to 3 months in people with type 2 diabetes, and slightly reduced HbA1c in people with prediabetes, but did not do much for people with non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Now, there is some discussion on the quality of that study. But overall, when it comes to BMI, insulin, blood glucose, waist circumference, waist to hip ratio, sleep quality, total cholesterol, triglycerides, depression symptoms, probiotics they scored a C or worse, even though those are the things that I see being advertised for. So these are great. These are great outcomes, but again, really specific populations that you may or may not actually fall into. And as a consumer who deals with some of these issues myself, I just can't imagine paying for something that really doesn't work. Now, I've already mentioned some of the potential problems with these supplements, but I'm actually going to show you the label of a very popular probiotic supplement and read off some of the places where you can see the lack of evidence. So this is the front label of a probiotic supplement that you could easily find in your local drugstore, health food store, whatever. I'll say it's $29.29 for 21 days of this supplement. So less than a month, about $30. This extra strength gummy says that it contains 8 billion CFU. Now, CFU refers to colony forming units, which is just essentially how we count the gut bugs. And 8 billion sounds like a lot, right? But the average human has 39 trillion microorganisms in their microbiome. So 8 billion represents just 0.02% of the community or the population of microorganisms that are already in your body. And that probably is not going to make a huge difference. I also want to point out on the label here, you can see that this supplement specifically contains 8 billion CFUs of Bacillus coagulans IS2. That is the strain of bugs that are in this supplement. And that strain has been shown to be pretty stable, which means it is going to survive that commercial process that I talked through. And B. coagulans IS2 has also been shown to be effective in treating IBS in adults. But what if you don't have IBS? Maybe that's not what you're trying to treat. Well, that's the only strain that you're getting in this probiotic. So it is probably not going to be an effective probiotic supplement for you. Another note on the bottle is it is formulated to provide at least 8 billion live cells per serving if continuously stored in a cool, dry place at or below 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and consumed prior to the expiration date. Storage and handling conditions can vary and may affect the total amount of cells delivered at the time of consumption. Well, what if you accidentally leave it in your car while you're running errands on the way home from the drugstore? Or what if the truck that it was delivered to the drugstore on got hotter than 75 degrees and you have no idea? That means by the time you take this supplement, it may not even contain the 0.02% of the population that already exists, which means it's going to be even less effective. And lastly, you will find this disclaimer on basically every supplement. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The reality is that the supplement industry in the United States is just not well regulated. There is no guarantee that what they say is in there is actually in there, that the dose they say is in there is actually going to be in there, or that there's any consistency between one gummy and the next, or one bottle and the next. And so to be paying $30 for every 20 days of this supplement, and remember, your microbiome reflects your habits. So as soon as you stop taking the supplement, your microbiome is going to go back to its steady state level. So to pay $30 for every 20 days for something that is, maybe not even going to be effective is probably not the right choice for most people. Now, all of that being said, probiotic foods have been a part of many cultures' traditional diets for centuries. And they might actually offer some evidence-based results. Probiotic foods contain these beneficial live microorganisms, and typically that means these are fermented foods. So some examples would be yogurt or kefir, sauerkraut or kimchi, kombucha, miso paste, tempeh, pickles that are fermented, not like American pickles that are made with vinegar, and certain aged cheeses, as well as sourdough bread. Specific strains of lactobacillus delivered via yogurt have been shown in both clinical trials and in vitro studies. In vitro studies being studies that happen in a petri dish or somewhere outside of the body. They have been shown to have antiviral benefits, to boost the immune system, to improve blood lipids like cholesterol, HDL, LDL, reduce adipose tissue, body fat, alleviate stress in healthy people and petrochemical workers. Yogurt has been shown to reduce inflammation through multiple different mechanisms in the body, to reduce diarrhea in both healthy and unhealthy children. The lactobacillus in yogurt has been shown to act as an antioxidant and even provide some cancer prevention. Strains of lactobacillus found in fermented cow's milk, pasteurized fermented cow's milk, have regulated the gut microbiota in people with constipation and acted as an antioxidant. Fermented cow milk tablets have been shown to improve cognitive function in healthy older adults. Kimchi has been shown to be a powerful antioxidant, and a fermented soy beverage showed potential power of breast cancer reduction in young Japanese women. So with that information, I highly recommend people regularly eat probiotic foods rather than trying to take a probiotic supplement. This is especially true because in addition to the live microorganisms that these foods are going to provide and may benefit your gut, they are also going to provide important macronutrients and micronutrients that are going to be useful for your health overall. Yogurt or dairy is going to provide some protein and some calcium, as well as zinc and magnesium, vitamin A. These are all things that most people are not consuming enough of already and would benefit from getting more of in their diet. Now, in addition to probiotics, which are supplements and foods that deliver the bugs to your gut, you maybe have also heard about prebiotics. And prebiotics are essentially food for the bugs in your gut. And again, just like people, there are some foods that are better for your gut bugs, and there are some foods that are worse. Now, the best foods, or the best prebiotics, are fiber. And fiber is the part of a carbohydrate that isn't fully digested and absorbed by the time it gets to your large intestine. By making it all the way to the large intestine, it becomes that food source for those microorganisms that live in your gut. So if you are on a low carbohydrate diet, or if the carbohydrates that you eat tend to be low in fiber, so more refined grains, you are probably not giving your gut enough of the food that they need to do their job. And their job is to digest fiber and produce all these different molecules that go on to other parts of the body and tell it what to do. Now, if you want more information about fiber, you can watch my video about what your poop is trying to tell you, or you can download my free fiber ebook that I will link to down in the description of this video. That ebook will explain the different kinds of fiber that exist, what conditions they might address, and it gives a bunch of different recipes and no-cook recipes, even fast food orders, that you can combine any 3 of the meal ideas in there to hit your daily fiber goal. Only about 5% of Americans are actually eating the recommended fiber intake levels. And so that is probably why many of us are feeling like there is just something a little bit off in our gut. As a registered dietitian, I am always going to recommend food first. So regularly eating pre and probiotic foods, things like yogurt, kimchi, miso soup, beans, lentils, whole grains, is going to be the most effective way to keep your gut health in check. In certain instances, it might make sense to take a probiotic supplement, but you want to do a little bit of research into that probiotic supplement and make sure that it's actually going to be effective for your concerns. For most people, food is probably going to be the most cost-effective and actually effective way to keep your gut healthy. If you enjoyed this video, I would so appreciate if you gave it a thumbs up. That helps tell the YouTube robots that you learned something and they should show it to more people like you. If you are interested in hearing more about specific foods that are going to be most beneficial for your gut, that is the next video that I will have coming out in this series. You can subscribe to this channel so you know when that one comes out. And thank you so much for being here.